We're going to keep this kind of simple, even though this is a relatively complex part, but we're going to break it down into chunks. We're going to use a lot of tools that you've already used and a couple new ones. So we're going to start by creating a sketch, and I've added that to my shortcuts menu. If you don't remember how to add that to your shortcuts menu, you bring that menu up by hitting the S key on your keyboard, and you can add shortcuts by doing a search for them. So we want the sketch tool, and to add it to this, there's a little up arrow here. You can see it with this one. There's an up arrow. I have an X because that will delete it from my menu. So I can delete it, and I can re-add it. So because it's already there, I'm going to select that, select a sketch plane, and L for line tool. And we're just going to start by drawing a pretty basic L shape. So make sure that everything is snapping to 90 degrees and line up with the end. So once you have everything lined up, now if you get something like this, sometimes this randomly pops up, you'll get this little extra line. You can select that, delete it, and then drag over a line. That way you don't have extra features. You want to keep things as clean and simple as possible. So let's start by adding some dimensions. So I'm going to dimension my overall height. I've used the D key to get the dimension tool. The overall height is 2.5. The overall width is 4 inches. The width of this top part is 1 inch, and the thickness of our bottom is 0.625, or 5/8 of an inch. And that starts our basic shape. Now we want to put this on our center point, so I hit the escape key, and you see how this is moving around? That's because it didn't add in a constraint that is necessary to keep everything from kind of going wonky. So if yours moves around, you want to use the horizontal vertical constraint and just make one of those vertical, because if you try to select any more, it's going to tell you it's over constrained anyway. So now I hit the escape key to get back to my selection arrow, and I can drag that in, and that automatically snaps it to a coincident constraint with that center point. And I want to use this location because I'm going to put an arc through this, and I want that to be the center of my arc as well. So make sure it's snapped to, or coincident with that center location. Hit E for extrude, and we're going to extrude this one, and we're just going to use the options over here. We're going to go symmetric, distance, and I want my total distance to be 5. So because this is each side, I want to do 2.5, and that'll give me a total length of 5 inches. Click OK, and there's the start of my basic shape. So the next thing I want to do is I want to cut through an arc right here, but there's a couple other features that we can add in the same sketch. So I'm going to use my shortcut key, S, create sketch, and I want to select this back plane. Now I want to show you another tool. So I'm going to bring up my shortcut menu, and I'm going to start typing in arc. And instead of having to draw an entire circle, you can just draw the portion of the circle that you need. So we're going to do this center point arc option, and I'm not going to add it to my menu because it's not something I use often. But you want to start by selecting the center point, move out along that line, click, and then sweep the direction that you want. Hit the escape to get your selection. We're going to use R for rectangle, and in the bottom corners we're going to draw 2 little rectangles. It doesn't matter the size because we're going to make them the size that we want. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that these are equal width because they're supposed to be the same. And the second thing I'm going to do is make sure that they are collinear. That's the word I was looking for. So we want to make sure that they are collinear, and then we can just add in a couple dimensions. So our first dimension is the width, and we are going to make this 0.75, and you'll see the other one adjust automatically. And the same thing should happen here when we go with our thickness, and we're going to go with I want to do half of the total thickness of that bottom part, which was 5/8. So what you can do, if you don't know the decimal, so if you want half of 5/8, which is 5/16, you can just do 5/16, and it recognizes fractions as well. And the last thing is dimension this arc, and I want its radius to be 1 inch. So we're going to go directly to extrude by hitting the E key, and we're going to select all 3 of these features. And because all 3 of these features go all the way through, we can select all 3. If this one only went part of the way through, or both of these went part of the way through, but this one went all, we would have to do them separately. But because all 3 go all the way through, we're going to select distance, all. We're going to flip the direction, and it automatically switches to cut, but just make sure it says cut there, and click OK. And that adds in those 3 features. I want to show you a new tool. So we have to start with a sketch. So shortcut key, create sketch. And I want you to select this side here and just use L for line. And we're going to put in a line. Our total height for this, we're going to dimension from corner to corner there, is 0.875. Now, we're going to hit finish sketch, but we're going to use a different tool here. So we're going to go down our create list, and we're going to look for rib. You can also do your shortcut menu, type in rib, and there it is. And we're going to select that line, and it's automatically going to generate a rib down to the lowest point that it can. Now this one, it's doing one direction, but it's going the wrong direction. So what we want to do is set this as a thickness of Oop, I lost my feature there. So if you accidentally get out of a feature, you can go down to your timeline here, and you can select that feature from your timeline by double clicking it. So I want this feature to be one direction, and we're going to make it 0.625, and see how it's going the wrong direction. I want this to be on the part, so I'm going to make that a negative, and it automatically zips over there onto that part. Click OK. So that creates a rib, and it stops at the bottommost portion of the part. So we're going to keep that, and we want to do a function called mirror. And this is in the Create tab. And you can also do this through your shortcut key with S and do a search for it. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have features selected. And it's really difficult to select just this object. So if we go down to our timeline, we can select that feature from our timeline. And our mirror plane, we need to turn on our origin for. So if this is already on, you don't have to turn it on. But I want to make sure mine's on. Select that. You can see a shadowed image giving you an idea of what it's going to do. And then we'll click OK. And that automatically puts the rib in. So we have one last feature to put through here. I'm going to show you another new tool. So we're going to do a sketch. Select that bottom surface. And the feature I want to show you is in the sketch tools, and it is called slot. So you can find it through here. You can also type in slot, and we're going to just do the feature called overall. And this is just going to give you kind of a loosely defined slot, but it's also going to automatically put in a bunch of constraints for us. So I'm just going to randomly click in here, give it a length, and then when I move outward, that gives it a width. And we need to create some dimensions for this. So first I'm going to dimension the radius, and we want this to be 0.25, and that automatically sets our width, and it automatically sets this radius as well. I want my overall length for this to be 1.5, and I want it centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension from there, and this is the center of our part because we did it symmetrically, and half of 1.5 is 0.75. The last thing that I need to do is set its distance from the edge, so here, and it gives us a center line, which is nice. And I'm going to make this 1.25. Go directly into extrude using the E key. We're going to select this feature. We're going to change it to cut all and flip the distance so it's going down. And that adds our feature in here. And the last thing, we're going to add 2 chamfers on these corners. So in the shortcuts menu, I've already added chamfer, but if you need it, you can start typing in chamfer and add it to your shortcuts menu. So I'm going to select my chamfer tool. I'm going to select those 2 corners. And my first dimension is going to be 0.25, and my second dimension is going to be 0.75, and that adds a chamfer. So if for some reason to distance isn't already set, like let's say you have equal, make sure that you switch it to to distant, and make sure that you change both dimensions, so 0.75. Click OK. And that does complete this part, so make sure that you save and make sure that you submit a screenshot to Canvas.